I'd like to invite everybody who's ever sung in the youth choir to please join me up here.
Seconds.
Excuse me? Yeah, let's start. Okay, all right, heads up. This is it. There would be many more if it weren't for the typhoon of '98 yesterday. Kept a few folks at home. I'm going to tell you a story. Now, it happens to be my story, but I think it's shared by most of the folks on this stage. Some of the details may be a little different, but I think it's a common story here. I still remember that day. I was 9 years old. It was the spring of my 4th grade. I was approached one day after school, right out here on Belknap, walking home, by a fellow classmate. And he said, you really ought to think about joining this neat choir here at Laurel Heights. They do a lot of fun things, and they got this summer camp coming up. And he told me about this choir director that was a fun guy. Well, there I was. I decided right there on the spot on the sidewalk that I'd join the Laurel Heights Methodist Church Wesley Choir. And little did I know what I was getting myself into. Now, looking back, I think it's amazing that that director had so much influence that little 9-year-olds were out recruiting. It was not my parents, I believe you, that brought us into the choir. It was word of mouth, and quite a few of these people here will tell you that same story. It was through their peers, through their friends, that they are here today. Well, that choir director, the fun guy, was a young, energetic fellow with a full head of dark hair. And his name to us was Mr. Holloway, and don't you forget it, Mr. Holloway. And by God, that's what we called him. Well, shortly thereafter, my first choir camp came along. It was Echo Valley at the HEB encampment. And that was such a tremendously rewarding experience for me. I had never seen anything like that. And I remember every minute of it. This city boy learned about swimming in a river, making Wasaki Gullion. And if you don't know, don't ask. We made s'mores. We laid under the stars to look at the constellations. We did treasure hunts laid out throughout the camp. And the beginning and ending of every day was with devotion, singing out those funny little yellow books. You remember those? Right? Carry the Rocks. It was great. When I got home from that camp that first year, I was hypnotized. I was so overwhelmed with emotion that I remember I went to my bedroom and laid on my bed and cried. Well, But I took to this choir business like a fish to water, I tell you. I loved every minute of it. Well, almost every minute of it. Like those times when rehearsal wasn't going quite right, and so he would go down the road. Everybody would sing the solo, and you don't know the dread. Oh my gosh, 3 more people, 2 more people. Oh no, I'm next. I can't do this in front of my peers. But we did it. And I followed the choir program through Wesley, through chapel, the youth choir, through the chancel choir. And of all the many choirs that Mr. Holloway was responsible for at this church, and by the way, when he came here, there were 2 choirs. And he gave us, what's the number, Henry? 6 choirs. To us, it was obvious that his greatest love was devoted to the youth choir. And certainly no other group in this church did as many other extracurricular activities. We came to choir rehearsal, we sang every so often, but that was just the beginning. We did the choir camps, as I mentioned, at HEB, at Linside. We took trips to Concan at the beginning and ending of every summer. We dyed Easter eggs. We set up chairs for the parades. Car washes, selling Christmas greens, hay rides. The bull sessions, those were a big event for me. Kids who were not allowed to have opinions suddenly were able to sit in a room and discuss heady subjects. For us in the 60s, it was Vietnam, it was racial relations, it was space race, there was Bob Dylan putting ideas in our heads, and Peter, Paul, and Mary, and it was a tremendously rewarding experience to be able to do that. We went Christmas caroling, we swam at the Wheeler Lake, we had choir rallies, choir shows, choir trips. All of this was well beyond his job description, and it amazes me that he gave so much extra time for us. I don't think I'm alone in saying that the choir trips produced memories for me that will be with me for the rest of my life. To spend a couple of weeks in a bus, living with your most favorite people in the world, seeing parts of the country that you probably would never ever have a chance to see otherwise, it doesn't get any better than that. And I was blessed to be able to go on as many as I went, 5, I suppose.
Billy,
Yes.
when you took over the restaurant in Utah,
We're getting to that. And we sang on these trips. It was not all fun, I tell you. We sang music and enjoyed every minute of it. Yes, we did. Well, except for when we would go into a restaurant, and after we finished eating, Mr. Holloway would get us all together and we would sing, "This land is your land," right? And we were mortified. But there were many memorable trips. Colorado, Wisconsin, with a swing through Canada. I went to California. I know there's been trips to New York, to New Orleans, Florida, Mexico. Now, I don't know if it's myopic to think that I was fortunate enough to be a part of the youth choir during the golden years when there was a very, very special group of teenagers in the choir. There was a great deal of recruiting going on among us, and I see a bunch here who came by word of mouth through their friends. And many of us were brought into the church that we otherwise would not have been here otherwise were it not for the youth choir. The youth choir during those years would have 40 or 50 members. And on our choir trips, we would fill up a Greyhound bus and still need folding chairs in the aisles. And I think Charlie Maddox ended up in a folding chair every single time. Now, many of us here would love to share stories, and we could be here for a long time. So I have just made an almost arbitrary decision to pick 2 or 3 people. And we'll start with Tommy Talcott, who, if he wasn't a charter member, he sure was there from very early on. Tommy, where are you?
Right here. I have no script. As you know, Mr. Holloway helped us through many passages. He was there. He was the rite of passage. He helped us as children become adults and good adults. And we gave something to Henry, the true rite of passage from the front of the Greyhound bus to the little room in the back. And with the aid of the bus driver, we grabbed a hold of the railings and got the bus doing this. And when we heard him flailing around back there, we knew he had certainly been blessed.
Any of you old-timers out there who were around Laurel Heights in the 60s will certainly remember the impact of the Hill Boys and the mischief they caused around this church. Virginia Hill has every right to be worn out, having raised 4 boys, each possessing very firm, definite, and well-articulated opinions. Here now is Mr. One Last Kiss, Paul Hill.
I can't really follow that act, I don't think. Henry, when Billy asked me to say a few words, I said, that's about all I probably will be able to say. And when he said, you've got 1 minute, I said, I don't know if I can fill it up. There are no words, so I will just kind of surmise what I think everyone here is trying to say, and that is, thank you, we love you.
We're going to get a little close to home. Paul Parsons, come on down.
You doing okay out there? You're hanging in there. Well, I'm going to be short too. Hello, radio.
Well, Vicki, we're making up some of that time you spent there a little earlier on. Okay. Okay, all of us standing here share one common experience, the test of fire known as the choir show. Every summer, for one weekend, all of us frogs would turn into princes and princesses. And despite our angst-filled teen existences, we would suddenly be putting on makeup, tights, and even coconut shells. Standing on stage performing in front of our friends and families, and just kissing our self-consciousness goodbye. Was it all worth it? You bet it was. The choir shows opened us up to a world of music that we most probably would have never come to know, and exposed us to the thrill of putting on a show. Hit it, John.
It's really a fun to be in. You're the one. You make that time lots of fun. Rubber ducky, I'm awfully fond of.
As I said, some of us couldn't get here because of the weather, others because of school obligations and just travel. We do have folks from California, from Maryland, Minnesota, Kansas, Louisiana, San Marcos. We got several letters, and I'd like to share one letter with you from Carolyn McCready Kelfer, who we all remember from the 60s. She could not attend. She's in Georgia, and it was a bit too much of a trip for her. But she kindly wrote us a letter. Dear Mr. Holloway, congratulations on 40 wonderful years. You have touched so many lives, and mine in particular. I joined the Caroler Choir in the 4th grade with my best friends Carolyn Peary and Randa Buse. It was my experience in choir that drew me to church and to Christ. I enjoyed my elementary and middle school years in choir, but my years in the youth choir were the most enjoyable and influential. I was privileged to attend 2 choir trips to Estes Park, Colorado, and 1 trip to Green Lake, Wisconsin. Each was more memorable than the last. We enjoyed such great fellowships, sleeping on the church floors, eating and singing together for 2 weeks. All the great friends, Dale Staley, Stephanie Gray, Julie Culbertson, Paul and David Hill, Carolyn Abbey and Billy Salaya. And those choir shows, South Pacific, Oklahoma, etc. They are times filled with wonderful memories and lessons learned that have lasted a lifetime. My last trip to Colorado in my junior year of high school was a high point for me. One evening at sunset, we hiked to the top of Bible Point, and you led us in a very special Vespers service. As the moon rose over the mountains, you asked us to lay our burdens at the foot of the cross and to accept Christ as our Lord and Savior. And I did just that. It has made all the difference in my life. I'm now 47 years old, have 2 wonderful children, and I'm a consecrated lay pastor at my Methodist church in Alpharetta, Georgia. And I know that it was through your guidance and example that I was led to Christ. An added benefit was that I also learned to love and appreciate music, and I still love to worship God in the adult choir today. Thank you for your time and your dedication. You have made a difference in many lives. Sincerely, Carolyn Jean McCready Kelfer. There's an amazing, sustaining spirit among this group that has brought us together from far and near over the years to meet and renew our friendships. And the people on Colwyn Pass certainly understand that from last night. We had a rip-roar going there. Out of one such gathering 11 years ago, Paul Hill offered up an anthem he had written that expresses our feelings for Mr. Holloway and what he did to change our lives. We'd like to conclude our section by attempting to sing that anthem for you. Thank you, Mr. Holloway.
Henry, I've rehearsed them, and it's a little rough, but there's a lot of heart here. Would you like to direct your choir? He said no, and it's not really a job that I want to try to fill the shoes with.
It's almost over. This only took 45 minutes in rehearsal. I don't know what happened. Few probably expected that a longtime bachelor like Henry would end up in the role of matchmaker. But through his choir and super adult programs, 12 couples found love at Laurel Heights. I'd like them to stand quickly as I call their names. And they're all still married, too. No divorces. Roy Baines and Jerry Weatherford, Paul Bueller and Ann Redmond, Nick Campbell and Jenny Souter. Paul and Ann, I know you're here. Billy Salaya and Barbie Hills, David Hill and Karen Hills, Henry Holloway and Susan Bruner, Maurice Maisel and Julie Pyland, Richard Paragon and Marjorie Zimmerman, Charles Pyland and Julie Armstrong, Arthur Pingree and our beloved Norma Collard, Roger Sadoff and Mary Jones, Scott Williams and Jean Ann Robbins. Okay, thanks. Jerry, at this time, Jerry Crockett, who's chairman of SPRC, would like to make a presentation.